That's the sound of the robot voice saying recording in progress. I think we're live, Seth.
Yeah, that's the noise that tells us to do the thing. But then we have to wait for everybody to come in.
I wonder if everyone else gets PTSD when that sound comes on.
Well, we have to give webinars.
That's true. You know. I do that a lot. Where regardless of how I'm looking forward to it or not looking forward to it, the ding ding of Zoom is like Pavlovian now. It's like
Got a couple more people coming in here. Just while people are coming in, this thing with the Boba Fett show, with everybody punching people in the helmet and people getting knocked out for hours after they get punched in the helmet. Mm-hmm. Can we stop with that? Can we stop with the kung fu in the sci-fi shows? Anyway, looks like we have a quorum, so I think we can proceed.
Dude, first of all, I'd like to address the burning comments about the lack of swords in this room. I'm aware. I've had vigorous conversations, people saying no more blades. I did a blade poll. The blades are out, but for limited time. We can bring them back. We'll do a Patreon. We'll see what we can do. But for right now, yeah, it's crazy. All right. So let's talk marketing. But we're going to talk marketing in a smarter way. We're not going to be like, hey, let's talk about email campaigns specifically. We want to do a little bit of a bigger holistic view of stuff, how it ties into cloud radio, but just in general too, like some general stuff that I think should be useful for a lot of people. So with that being said, let's talk about, in case you don't know who we are Cloud Radio. Long story short, we're a white labeled software solution, client portal, easiest way to shorten that down. Really, it's for MSPs to give to their clients, so it's supposed to be client facing. A lot of account management, automation, a lot of ticketing stuff in there, a lot of end user productivity, but the end goal is to try to give the clients like a home, right? It's a place that you guys go in there and share stuff and kind of increase transparency, and you'll see how that applies to marketing in a little bit. So who are these two schmucks talking about it? We're the first two hires. That doesn't necessarily make us the most adequate for this role, but it just so happens we're also marketing experts. So actually, psych, it does. Seth Wilson, Director of Biz Dev, has worked in plenty of marketing scenario. Please fill in for me, because I know.
Yeah, B2B marketing and services have been pretty much my whole career. I've been a marketing director at an MSP, so I've certainly looked down that long barrel of despair, and worked at an ad agency for many years, mostly doing digital marketing for, again, B2B type businesses. So yeah, very much my wheelhouse, and I've got a lot to say. And I also, I've seen about 1,000 MSP websites over the past year or two, doing demos and prospecting and things like that. So, yeah, consider myself an expert at least.
I'm another expert, a little bit different type, but this one is for you guys, because the agency I worked at prior to this, I worked for a couple of years. I worked my way up from writer to creative director there, and I did marketing specifically for MSPs to let's say end users, right? Obviously, sometimes it was like as little as B2C, sometimes it was B2B stuff. And it was really kind of an interesting experience. So there's a lot of stuff I have knowledge of in terms of running campaigns and what works, what doesn't, what's an uphill battle, what's an easy win. And we're going to talk about some of that today as well. But yeah, you got marketing focused people, and obviously now we work at Cloud Radio. So I think it's an interesting mix of how we apply that knowledge to what we do. So with that being said, let's see the kind of three main bits we're going to talk about for today on the agenda. Again, MSP marketing as a whole, the big overall picture where that kind of fits in. This concept that we've talked about a couple times before of stack cost to marketing cost, which is boiled down to like, can you leverage anything in your stack to be sexy in your marketing? Can you try to make some of that cost like pay for itself? The answer is yes. We'll see which ones are worth it. And then also, how to use Cloud Radio as a marketing differentiator. So as like last time, open discussion, we're going to keep this pretty informal compared to what we usually do for webinars, where we're like, hey, let's talk about this solution in depth. And sword play and sword talk is very welcome. So anytime.
And, and if you've got any burning questions, you're looking to start doing something, your marketing agency is trying to talk you into a certain tactic, feel free to throw the question in the Q&A section or chat, and we'll be happy to address it at the end.
Yeah, and I have to put the slide mostly so we're not like, it's like, it's not for support or feature requests, for discussing ideas, sharing news. Mostly it's so we can focus on the big picture stuff. So we're not like, let's figure out why your office isn't syncing. We will help. That's just hit up at support@cloudradio.com. I think they're watching the webinar, so they might literally be like, let us know. But let's get right to it, Seth. I figure we could start off with some of the interesting stuff we talked about before the call. We were kind of discussing where to start this thing. And I want to start up there at that big MSP marketing as a whole. Now, we know that a lot of times the people that come to Cloud Radio, the people we've spoken to across the board in terms of industry, as far as what they serve, size, number of employees, and then how mature the marketing efforts are, whether you have an in-house team, you're working with an agency, who knows, right? So I figure we could start with a couple different channels and see like, what the most common ones are that we've seen work and not work. I'll start with one. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of email marketing. That always comes down to list management, and the lists are always really, really tough. I see a lot of people buying lists out there, qualified people. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I've banged my head against that wall a few hundred times.
I was going to say, like, I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I will say that just like you don't like to receive emails from randos going to buy my stuff, vice versa is the common concern for people. But again, with organic lists, with lists that you grow yourself, that's great. The question is, how do you do that? Right? That's always a pretty tough cookie to crack.
And do let me preface, right? As we're talking about these things, if a tactic is working for you, right, it's worked for you in the past, that's awesome. When we're talking about, you have a finite number of resources, right? What we've seen is just the most effective. If we say something, not necessarily working for us, doesn't mean it's not a good tactic. And trust me, doing something is better than doing nothing, right? So never let us discourage you from doing something that's working, but just we're going to be speaking from our experiences, the things that have worked more effectively than less.
Yeah, again, one of the reasons I wanted to do this webinar is because a lot of people, again, especially with New Year, it's kind of like the gym mentality. It's like new year, new me, want to get out there, want to look good. A lot of people kick up the budget, kick up their efforts and start off really strong here. And like Seth said, I mean, it's like the motto I've always had for marketing, and pretty much I've always seen other people have too, is like the best type of marketing is the one that actually happens, right? Don't let it stop you from going, well, we might not get it, whatever. Like, even if you're floundering out there and you're not quite sure, that's still better than complete dead silence. For a fact, no one's going to see you out there. Where I wanted to take this real quick is to offer a couple of glimmers of hope. I mean, obviously email is one of them. We know the majority, I've seen this firsthand. I've done some research myself on it. The majority of leads and new marketing that people do is from referrals, right? A lot of the sales close from referrals. Super common, still the most common way to do it. One of the rays of hope, but also warnings I would like to give people is that when I worked at that ad agency, we did a lot of stuff, again, a lot of like new websites, newsletters and emails and stuff like that. What a lot of people were seeing is probably what you've heard a billion times over. It takes a lot of time, right? A lot of people are trying to crawl their way up into the search results on their page. Most people obviously are going to use Google. That can be a really big uphill battle. So what a lot of people do to circumvent that is they go pay-per-click, right? And I've had questions completely irrelevant from Cloud Radio that when I'm doing these, whether it's an onboarding call or training or demo or whatever, when I mention that, people are like, hey, I got any tips? And actually I do, and I figured that would be something interesting. So if you're not familiar, if you ever wanted to get in there, I actually pulled up our pay-per-click account because we use, obviously Cloud Radio does some stuff too, but I really wanted to show it as far as like the cost of that stuff. So the reason this is brought up in this call, in this marketing discussion, is that, again, circumventing a lot of that timely, high effort marketing is great. You pump money into Google, you get right to the top, you pay to win, right? But you really, really pay to win. What I did up here is I punched in a bunch of words, right? So these are some of the more common ones that, we're looking for from IT services, managed service provider, outsource, right? And obviously people are going to call it different things. But what I really want to focus on is the costs and the volume for these guys. So when we look down at Google's tracking, right? This is historic data for all of last year. We're going to see some interesting trends, right? So for example, we're going to see a lot of the IT services stuff, having a decently high search volume. But what we really want to take away from here is that it's expensive, right? Top of page bid, how much it takes you to get to the first 4 ads in Google runs about $45 on the high end nationally per click, right? That could be grandpa clicking by accident. That could be a real lead. That could be some bored kid typing whatever, right? There's a lot of variance here. You can see some of the other stuff in here, like IT security services. This stuff, if you have a Google account, worth getting into anyways, because it'll show you some trends in general. IT security shot up by the end of the year. You can see that pop up real high.
Something around into Q3 and the beginning of Q4. What happened around then?
What are you saying? What are you saying? But yeah, so all in all, like there's a couple things to take away. Price is a huge one. The other thing we want to look at besides just year over year is like, take a look at the average monthly searches. This is nationwide in the US.
Yeah. It's tiny. And this is also including a lot of things they're not even meeting for that, right? They might be, instead of IT support, they might be looking for like Buffett support or something like that. You know, there's a very broad range.
For those that do this, I'll share a brief personal anecdote, because again, I did a lot of MSP marketing in this. MSP is a cursed keyword for two reasons. One is the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. Damn you, Minneapolis-St. Paul. And the other one is Movie Star Planet, a video game that I think has ruined many of my search. Minneapolis-St. Paul. But yeah, the Michigan State.
Well, and that is kind of the fundamental kind of problem when you're advertising an MSP, but it really does speak to the solution for not just the small businesses that are MSPs, but most business marketing in general. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, well, first off, managed service provider is not really a thing. If you look in the IRS tax code with the way they categorize businesses, MSP is not a thing. There's IT service providers, there's information technology, whatnot. Even Google, though, doesn't really classify that as a thing. So we, already as an industry, we kind of refer to ourselves that nobody else refers to us as. But even things like IT support, IT solutions, IT provider, that is such a broad thing that even if you do rank well for it, you may not necessarily be making a very convincing case that you're the right person for it. This is what a lot of businesses get wrong when they're trying to market themselves. They think about, okay, well, what's the largest opportunity, and let me go for that. When really the most effective way to do it in marketing is to figure out, what you're best at. I've heard it referred to as the hedgehog before. I think it was like Socrates or Plato or something like that had the metaphor of, the fox has a lot of very clever ways, to solve something and does something different every single time. Whereas the hedgehog consumes vastly less energy because it's got the same solution every time, which is just to curl up into a ball. And so in business, it's useful to find that hedgehog. Like, what's the thing that I just nail every time? What's the type of business that comes to me and I just know that I'm going to hit it out of the park because that's where my expertise lies? And those are the things that you want to actually advertise around, not just in SEO and SEM and like AdWords but marketing as a whole. Just because you indicate that you specialize in something doesn't preclude you from the other things, your other industries that you work in. But it does make an especially compelling point when you can say, hey, I am all about this, and I know your specific needs. And if that tends to be when I was ever building an AdWords campaign for an MSP or anybody in sort of I did a lot of stuff for lawyers, right? You never want to go for what you call a short tail keyword. You want to go for a longer tail keyword conceptually for any type of marketing, because that's the one you can speak to really make a slam dunk presentation around. So as far as keywords that you would actually want to advertise around, you want to advertise around the things related to that great solution that you put in place at the type of client that you do well. That specific problem they have. They got an accounting system integration problem, or they really need to move their servers to the cloud or something like that. The things that are most relevant to them that aren't on this extremely well beaten path that's super expensive is always the things you want to target, because they're way more convincing that if when you do actually, you are the dog that finally catches up to the post truck. You actually know what to do when you get there, and have a much greater chance of biting that tire and deflating it.
Yeah, and to illustrate that too, like I like to do this again. We were thinking about like, how do we talk about this? How do we kind of break into the marketing angle of this? Pay-per-click is a really fast way to both get an idea of like what it costs to get into the game, to see again how much competition there is. Like obviously native marketing efforts, sending out emails, doing all that stuff requires you to do it for a while. You start to build up these statistics and you start to be able to analyze it yourself. But again, besides just the cost of tools and stuff to do that, the man hours, the people managing it, and there's a whole thing there. But I wanted to look at a couple of things because to Seth's point, when you start pinpointing these are some pretty generic terms. When you start pinpointing them to an area, it gets ridiculous. Shout out to New York City, who has fleeced me many, many, many times. But when you look at them too, it's like some of these keywords can get ridiculous. So they're about 45 right now. Oh, look at that. Actually, they're pretty good. But the search volume is starting to get real low in New York. No good. Anyways.
That's, biggest city in the country.
So it's like we start to get down to this level, and like what Seth was saying, I saw the biggest success not with these generic things, especially with the outbound marketing efforts of like IT services, but like he was saying, like a specific problem, IT solutions for nonprofits, right? We start getting into stuff like that. That's a little bit longer tail, and obviously there's far, far longer than that too, right? Like this one's a super low one, but it's super easy to win. The cost is probably next to negligible in certain areas, right? These are the types of things you want to be focusing on. But
and even deeper than that, and where you can get even more clever is, what are the IT solutions that are specific to nonprofits, right? So what are if you've done 10 nonprofits, what's the thing that you had to fix at all of them? What's the problem that they're all facing? If you can make content around that, it's so much cheaper and so much more effective. We see very low demand here, right? I mean, for a certain degree, we call ourselves MSPs, and there's no demand, right, for necessarily MSP services. To a certain degree, and I've always kind of thought about cloud radio ourselves, like in the way that we market ourselves like this, is you sort of have to gin up demand for this thing. They know they have a need, but they don't know what they need. They know they need help with IT, but they don't really know that they need a managed service provider to do that. They think they just get an IT guy and it's all solved. So to a certain degree, you have to gin up the demand for this thing. And there's another organization that does that. It's the Beef Council. Kind of always a mysterious organization to me, and I always get excited because I always think of steak when I think of them. But what do they do? They're paid by cattle ranchers and cattle like beef boxing companies across the country to just gin up demand for beef. And how do they really do that other than commercials showing you tasty pictures of beef? For the most part, it's recipes. The Beef Council website is literally just a big website about beef recipes. And why they do that is because it's not good enough to just say, go buy beef. It's just like it's not good enough to say, get the MSP services, right? They're showing you a specific way in which they can serve up this thing that they want you to buy, right? And in seeing that, and seeing that, okay, well, yeah, if I follow these steps, I will get a specific result. That's a much more compelling presentation and a much more compelling sort of ask than just say, you should do this thing because it's good for you. So when you're advertising, you're looking for those recipes, and case studies to a certain degree is what a lot of people talk to them, like why that's important. A lot of people just put case studies on their website because like, oh yeah, we got to have case studies, right? But the real reason you're putting the case studies on the website is to show any prospect that might be coming your way, oh yeah, that looks like me, that looks like my problem. Oh, and there was a specific way they solved this for somebody else. They are probably the people I need to talk to. And that it does require some specificity, some targeting and saying, hey, I'm for this specific type of instance, more so than others, but that tends to get you more business rather than less. It's one of the great sort of counterintuitive things about marketing that you learn for business to business context is that the more specific you get, the more leads you get.
Yeah, and that's also the crux of why we kind of ordered this presentation in this way, because again, we know there's a billion different types of marketing efforts. We know that you could be doing a lot of stuff. And again, like Seth said at the very beginning, if you're doing it, don't stop. Like never stop, readjust, but don't ever just, it's all wrong, right? Always keep adding to it. You see with us, right? With our webinars, with some of the blogs we produce, right? We change up the strategy, but we try to maintain that, the CEO, Jeff says, kind of like that factory, because we know that consistency is really, really, really important. And I would advise anyone to stick to something and go for it. But I wanted to talk about, instead of just saying all these things that are like, yeah, this kind of works, this doesn't work, what does work? How can we start to build something internally? And again, knowing that a lot of people don't have a lot of time and money for this, what's the most effective bang for the buck you can do with marketing? And that's to take a look at some of the stack stuff. Now, it's not really a secret for most people, but I will bring it up again. This whole concept of stack to marketing is kind of cool, because if you look at what you're building your stack with, and I wrote a blog about this back in the day. I'm not going to like read it out loud or anything, but if you want a little bit more detail and context, it's in here.
It's a good one though, Ricky. Let's just everybody read it.
Thanks. It's one of those things that I'm just like, a lot of the tools you go out and get, because we go to a lot of conferences, right? See other vendors and whatnot. Every single year, every single month, something new pops up that becomes the next must-have thing. We see it with security, like ridiculously, right? I go to conferences and it's like 80% security vendors, regardless of what conference. That's always the thing, right? But when we turn around, what's happening for most people, especially like the smaller people, smaller MSPs that are looking to break into the market, is they're just building. You can't be an MSP until you have email encryption. Well, you can't really be how can you call yourself an MSP until you have a NOC? And how can you be an MSP until you have help desk and this and this? And that's all great. And by the time you assemble it all, you're looking at a seat cost of like, 200 something, maybe 250, like ridiculous, right? Something very, very high that you could charge. But for a newbie, getting that out and proving that value to the client is like really difficult, especially when somebody else comes up, does a half-assed job, and they say, hey, it's going to be $35 a seat or something ridiculous like that. And you're like, well, crap. So this concept of stack costs into marketing costs, I boil it down to what's sexy about the stuff you're getting, right? The marketing, the stack things that you're adding to it, how can you turn those around and literally leverage those vendors and those points as good marketing? Now, there's a good way and a bad way to do that. We've seen a lot of times the bad way, not to like, shame anyone, because they literally tell you to do this, is whenever you go on your website and you slap in powered by, powered by Cloud Radio, right? You want to slap that right on there. And it makes you feel good because it makes you feel like it adds legitimacy. Again, this is a lot for the smaller MSPs out there. But the end user has no clue. Like, they don't know who we are. They don't know who WebRoot is. They have no idea who Datto is or ConnectWise. Zero clue, right? It doesn't do anything for them. So it just makes it look very, very, again, Jeff quote, NASCAR-y, right? You just slap a bunch of stickers on there. That's the bad side of it, right? There is plenty of really, really good stuff that you should be getting from your vendors. So basically every vendor, ourselves included, has some kind of stuff that we give you to help empower you in that aspect, right? Whether that's a flyer to bring to the table when you do it, whether that's some talking points or PowerPoints. Most of it is overload. You have to kind of figure out what works best. But these are the things that can help you turn around and put your logo and deliver something to help you get a head start, right? You're not having to literally hire copywriters and do all this stuff to come up with these insane flyers from you. Some tweaking should do it. But remember, the best marketing is the one that you turn around and say it's yours, right? That's the whole concept of white label and why we're really, really big about it. This doesn't matter to you at all. This should never show up in your stuff, right? It is your portal for us. Always will be. Cloud Radio should be gone. That's why, again, all about that. But
and just to like briefly touch on, like, think of the impact on that to the prospect and your client understanding of what it is you do, right? So most MSPs, they want to be the CIO. They don't want to be the IT guy, right? And so let's take that example to like the COO versus like a janitor, right? You don't want to be the janitor coming with a bucket full of tools, right? And all these different tools that you're bringing the situation, because well, why can't they just go get those tools themselves and do it themselves, right? The COO doesn't walk in and say, hey, we're going to use, this type of bleach in the bathrooms, and we're going to use, 409 on the sinks, right? They have a broader vision and a plan, and that's what you're actually trying to sell to the client. So when you distract them with all these other things that you're doing and all these other things, they can often avail themselves, by themselves, and they don't need you. You are very much, kind of undercutting what your value is.
Yeah, and again, it's like, I know that we're slipping into it quickly, but that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this with you, Seth, and vice versa. That we're talking about, like, how does a solution like Cloud Radio, or literally Cloud Radio in this case, help with that? Because again, the challenge is relatively clear. We have marketing at the top, a billion ways to do it, right? You've got stacks and vendors that are feeding your stuff. And eventually you kind of end up with two general buckets. You've got your external marketing, right? That's the one you're trying to get net new leads and all that other stuff. expensive, really hard, takes a long time. Period. The end. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. There's no shortcut to that, ever. Trust me, I've lied to people. It's a lie. You can't do it fast. The other one, I mean, PPC is kind of like that accelerator if you just burn money, but still, that's always a gamble too, because you never know who's going to be clicking. But the other side of it is the internal one, right? And that's what we recommend, obviously, anybody to always pump out and do more of, because it's easier. That's your existing clients. Have you maximized that? Have you exhausted? Have they gotten everything from you that they need to get? Are they actively recommending you? That kind of introduces stuff like what Seth was saying, like internal, like, are you doing a good job as a CIO of selling your value, not just like a basic service? Are you doing stuff for like maybe like a referral program, right? That's an easy win for people, whether it's, literally a couple $100, whatever it may be, of something, right? The reason that we bring up Cloud Radio for it and how it relates is because while this is not really terribly effective at sending emails to everyone else, one of the initial things that you can do to get off the ground and start marketing really effectively is that internal thing. It does have ramifications for external, but let's focus on internal first. So obviously we market the office hours to internal clients. Most people have seen Cloud Radio, so they know it. So it's not like we're going to do a demo here, but a lot of times we want to focus on what features that we have in the portal, like to speak to that thing in the first place. What do we actually know that can help make people more aware of it? It can help you push out those messages. There's a couple different things. So I would argue that the very first thing starts with the service request. This is like a passive marketing thing to begin with, right? We've seen this before. Cloud Radio, generally speaking, hooks up to a PSA. It doesn't have to, but that's how 99% of people that consume Cloud Radio do it. And when we hook up to a PSA, the whole point is that you're sending the tickets from Cloud Radio to your PSA. So the technicians don't have to do anything different. This screen right here helps people sell a bunch more without doing a single thing. Why? Because you have a place when you have a portal, right? It doesn't have to be Cloud Radio, but I work here. When you look at it, you go, okay, I have a way to show everything I can do for them. And that's just passive stuff, right? Once that engagement starts, once you have things that are done and everything's set in the contract, anything other than that is just a pain to get to. Or you have to do meetings to talk to them about other stuff. You have to send them things out of the blue. Difficult, right? Make that a passive thing that is always in their face. So it's both passive and active in terms of showing it off. Maybe I can get more laptop sales. Maybe I can get this. Maybe I can start to request higher echelon things just from this. Kind of low level. Higher level stuff like what Seth was saying as far as like the VCIO or the CIO and all that stuff happens more like where we do our planner, which this concept is, in brief, if you have a portal and you're already giving them all that day-to-day stuff, that ticketing view, that reporting view, all that stuff, then you should save yourself all that breath during like QBRs to talk about the higher level things. Is it really marketing? It's like, yeah, basically, because what we're doing here is we're, again, showing them not just order a laptop, but we're saying like, hey, we can do this migration. Hey, we might want to do this entire security offering because X, Y, and Z. And the whole point of Cloud Radio is to have that proof baked in so you can do it, right? You can literally show them why you're recommending stuff. And it's like, it's not like marketing out of the blue never does anything for anyone. It's like your nurturing cycle of what would traditionally be something you'd send emails to them for months and weeks and all that happens in the portal. The nurturing is their data just aggregates and you go, well, you don't have MFA on, your computers, half of them don't have AV. These dudes haven't taken security training and we probably want to do this. Here's why, right? Building that case. Something like this is really, really helpful for, again, internal marketing. But even more literally, some of the stuff that we do in here is to help you build that traditional stuff. So planner aside, if you didn't know, there's a general marketing function of Cloud Radio. Under your partner dropdown, there's a marketing tab, and there's a couple different things here that you can use to some pretty great efficacy. Seth and I were talking about marketing this and how to build those and sending them out. And Seth, I think, has a neat one.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, I remember my first week, marketing director at MSP, such a simple request laid at my feet. We would like to get an email out to all of our Office 365 admins. Don't worry, it's indicated somewhere in ConnectWise. Just go figure it out. I think I came in on a Monday, and I think I got that email out by a Friday. I don't think I'm a dense guy. But it was just, that's really what it took, to get the things out, and then realize, stuff in ConnectWise was inaccurate. And it is a nice aspect of Cloud Radio, because that's part and parcel of the implementation of Cloud Radio, is to identify your audiences. And you kind of have this abstraction layer of knowing like who's human users, right? And who they are and what their role is and what industry they're in, they're not conference room phones and all the other things that might be floating around in a tenant or a PSA.
Yeah, and that because we get a lot of people that, again, I use the term marketing in a loose sense because I want to talk about both that external and internal. This is still that internal part, right? A lot of that marketing even comes down to general communications. I've called this communications in the past when I talk about this with prospects and current clients alike, because I'm like, look, you're not always trying to sell people stuff, and it's not always about upselling or whatever. Sometimes it's like Seth was saying, it's legitimate, just, I got to get a message out, man. How do you do that scalably? So what we have on screen here is, in the nature of Cloud Radio, when you set it up, obviously you're going to be porting in a bunch of people from the PSA or office or wherever, really. And when they come in, you want to be able to quickly filter a list and go, hey, I want a list of my marketing people in my healthcare companies. They need to get this message. That's probably really way too specific. More common is stuff like this, right? I want to get my admins in my Office 365 company, something like that, like Seth was saying. So this kind of stuff helps to grease the wheels to make it easier to reach out and do that stuff. But still, all that Cloud Radio is doing here by itself is building you a list. Now, we try to facilitate the bigger marketing picture here by hooking up with stuff like MailChimp, right? We're able to basically send a list via API to MailChimp to keep things in sync between the two, because obviously Cloud Radio itself, not an email sending platform. It really doesn't do any of that stuff in the first place. The closest we really get is building that list, but that is to help facilitate and make that bit easier. Now, more active stuff, right? What about faster? Modern communication now, especially with marketing efforts, gets snappier, gets more in face, it gets more organic, right? Emails, while they're still traditional, while they're good, we all get a billion of them from everybody, including random vendors we've never heard of that bought our names off a list from going to a conference once. I know who you are. But we also have stuff that's like, what about push notifications? You do broadcasts, right? That's a thing, right? It doesn't have to always be this giant, huge campaign with this call to action, whatever. Sometimes it's like, hey, existing clients, changes to your terms of service. Hey, existing clients, this new thing came out, click here to see it, right? There's lots of things you can do like that in the system to do these pushes. And even more passively, right, but still very effective, is stuff like banners. I have one of these up and we'll look at it in a sec, but something like that I'm using right now in Cloud Radio for like a Comcast outage. It's like, hey, this is out, right? We're planning on coming back down or coming back up in a little bit. I said it for a very long time with more details, right? That kind of stuff can help you passively market. In this case, it's a poor example because this is a literal notification, but like, hey, what about new Office 365 training courses available? Click here to learn more, right? Link off to a blog or literally another course on your page. This is the kind of stuff that when you start to put it together, when your internal clients get in there, you might have gotten a portal, right, for ticketing. Maybe you got it for this one client that just needs some training, but now you're able to inject that stuff where you're actively encouraging them to look at the other stuff you can do, right? It's not just the one thing, the static thing. That startup of marketing is really simple, takes minimal effort, and it has really great results. Because if you are building this ecosystem, then you should be able to control kind of the conversation here, because you literally have the controlling arm to it.
Well, and two, it's really important to point out, it's not just that it's low-hanging fruit. It's actually like kind of the be-all, end-all of MSP marketing. I don't know if there's a whole lot of people listening that can say that they've gotten a majority of their client base from just wild blue yonder marketing. Typically, it's a matter of referral, right? Even if they've heard about you somewhere else, they normally check with somebody else to make sure that like you're legitimate, and they have a friend at least saying that, yeah, these guys are pretty good at it. If not, the whole reason they talked to you in the first place. And that's why it's so important to saturate that audience before any other audience. Your existing clients need to know about you and what you do and what makes you different and special more than any other group of people in the world. That's counterintuitive, right? They're already clients. Why do I need to convince them to buy my product? It's not what you're convincing them to do. You're convincing them to sell your product, right? And it does. It comes down to, you can't shortcut it. You have to build a good stack and make a good service around it, right? But just assuming that the client's going to understand what it is you do and recommend you, that's kind of a fraught path. Because think about this: go to your average client, and just think about if they were asked on the street, oh, what is an MSP, or who is your IT provider, right? Not your main point of contact, but anybody else in the business. Oftentimes, you're going to get a big, I don't know, and that's a problem. And it's one thing for your main point of contact to know who you is and know who you are, right? But sometimes that person gets a different job and you get thrown out with the bathwater because nobody else there knows what you do. So it's not only a retention problem, but it is the very fundamental basics of what your engine is. What is driving all of your marketing efforts tends to be your existing clients and how well they know what it is you do and what makes you special.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. We had it on the last webinar too, and it's kind of a weird conversation, but I feel like because it's office hours, I want to talk about it. User counts, right? Cloud Radio bills by user. And that's always something people are like, well, I only want to pay for the active users and I only want to pay for the other stuff, which I get it. Like logically, I get it. But listen to what Seth just said. And that's part of what we're trying to push here, which is kind of why we push back against this. The whole point of what we're trying to do and what we want you guys to do is to not have, like Seth said, that point of contact is almost functionally useless to you. That will keep your relationship going for as long as they are willing to have it go. If you can spread out and fan out and have 10 advocates or 100 advocates that know who you are, know what you do, and know how to get to you, then you've increased your marketing 100-fold just by doing a freaking button that says buy a laptop. Something stupid like that, right? It seems simple, but it has ridiculously large effects over the course of stuff. Again, it doesn't really have to come down to Cloud Radio, to be honest, but we've built it with this in mind. And the other thing that we've talked about, what's the right word here? Extensively, that's the one, is how it applies to external stuff. Because like we're saying, we're talking about internal stuff. We're talking about functionally militarizing the people that you have to be fanatics and say, hey, yeah, it's really great. It's really easy. We see them all the time. We see their name. We know what they do. We understand what they do. We have a focusing orb, in this case, your portal, to see what they do. But how does that translate to net new people? Well, on one hand, yes. Like if they go out there and do it and they leave a review or something, that might be good. There's a little bit of that in Cloud Radio. Like if you guys ever use the feedback portion of it, right? Cloud Radio has a built-in CSAT in there. Even if you integrate with that other stuff, there's a section in the feedback that has like a little like, hey, leave us a review on positive prompts, right? Some ramification in there, trying to get your name out there, but we're almost a closed loop system. So what we've been recommending to people is like, okay, well, if you go down that path, right? Seth and I were talking about this like yesterday, I believe. And it was like, you go down that path and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I have this great MSP. I understand what they do. What is the very next thing that person asking your client going to do? They're going to look you up, right? They're going to look you up. They're going to see the kind of reputation you have, right? Usually that's not really an issue with MSPs. Like no reputation is far more common than like very poor. That's not usually a problem, but they go to the website, right? They want to see what you're about. They want to see that you can mirror what your clients have told them. And one of the biggest problems that we see there, and this is another one that we pair with like very good thing to start off with, is literally show them what they get. So many people have sites, they have their services list, right? Backup, security, blah, blah. Maybe that's all under one service, under that one managed service. It's a one size fits all. Maybe there's some slight differences, but in any case, the average person still doesn't get anything from that because the problem is it doesn't look like anything to anyone. Managed services to me looks the same way that managed backup and managed security do. There's something you guys do and I just get. And that's really weird. We've talked about this extensively. Anyone who's talked about us, talked to me and Seth, we always talk about the concept that like not that long ago. I mean, obviously pre-COVID was even easier, but let's call it 20 years ago. The only way to fix something was that dude came to your desk, you had your handshake, hey, how's your going? How was the game? Right, cool. Let me just fix that email. You lost that, right? Now it's all remote. So it's easier, it's faster, but now it's harder to prove that value. So what are you left with? You're left with people going, yeah, they're great. What do they do? Oh, they do security and whatever. Okay, what does that mean? It's like, oh, I don't know. I pay them 15 grand a month. They do it. I'm sure it's great. Like that's the missing link for a lot of people for their marketing. Is they need something to prove that they do it. Again, doesn't have to be Cloud Radio, right? If you can make this yourself, I've seen people do it with SharePoint sites. I've seen people do it with a stack of paper, right? It gets harder depending on how much effort you have to put into it. Our posit here is to say like, well, if you could have it in a portal and you could show them and you could screenshot the portal, you could put videos, you could put it on your website. Then when someone goes in and goes, what does security look like? Security looks like me giving you this, right? Going, I can show you what it looks like. We can drill down. Okay.
I mean, well, that's the game changer. I mean, that's the, I've sold MSP services. I've sold cloud radio probably to a few of the people listening. Probably did your demo originally. And you know, one's a lot easier than the other. In the MSP world, when I was selling services, it was really difficult because I was just basically selling a stack of paper, like an SLA that nobody ever read. I couldn't get them to read it. You know, if you pointed a gun at them, couldn't get them to read the thing. And so past that, they were like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm getting the IT. If I did my job too well, then what was the deliverable in a month? It was normally just an invoice, right? And that gets to be a really difficult relationship to establish in the first place, and even more difficult to maintain over time, because every client, it's not just your own clients, but every client seems to have this magical amnesia that crops up. They can't keep in their minds why they're paying you. You get to them, they're on fire, they're about to go out of business.
Yeah.
You fix their problems, you do your job too well, and if that only takes like 6 months for them to look around and go, whoa, well, nothing ever breaks. Why are we paying these guys? Happens every time.
Or everything's still broken. Why are we paying for you? It's like, I fixed 1,000 problems and there's 4,000 more to go, and they still don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, and in that situation, you need to have some good CYA in place, which we help with as well.
But yeah, I think that's the concept that I really wanted to take away. Again, we've kind of mentally structured it down like a funnel. All the marketing efforts, you've got the stack tool and stuff. How do you combine all of that? And plus, you need a way to show it. How do you combine all of that in a way that makes sense? That like, if you go hire a salesperson or a marketing person, what are you giving them that can make them successful? Really is what it comes down to, right? Internal, external. If you go internal, if you go up talking to your clients, trying to get them to upsell stuff, you might go do that during a QBR or whatever you want to call your review meetings. You need a way to succinctly do that. The biggest pain with QBRs, we know, we've all talked about it, is the process of amalgamating everything and trying to make something that is repeatable, makes sense. It's not a huge, giant, boring thing, right? We try to take care of that by saying, hey, put the stuff in here. Maybe it's with the report archives, right? Go jam the reports in here from other stuff. But either way, make it accessible, but not overloading. So if you need to see it, you have it. Again, salesperson being armed with that, can you make them successful? But again, if you can make it repeatable like this, the answer should be yes. On the other hand, again, externally, right? If you have a marketing person and you have maybe an outbound salesperson, what can you do for them to try to get them to bring in more business? Well, referrals are great, again, if they happen, if you're making it very easy. But if they don't, you still need a tangible way to show people what they get. That's where the idea of like, again, videos and screenshots and partner materials and all that stuff comes in, because you should be armed with that. And you should be able to link them back and prove that you can actually deliver security. What does that look like? Oh, it looks like this report and this, and we're going to do this. Not just like, looks like a bill and I'll tell you you're secure and I'll email you and you're hacked. It's like, not really a big fan of that. So all in all, I think that these different marketing functions come together. And if you do it properly, it's going to take time. That's the other thing that I cannot stress enough. There's no such thing in marketing as a quick fix. There's some guerrilla campaigns out there that people, tout and go like, oh, we have this thing with gift cards and coffee and this and that. That's cool, but like you can't always do that, right? So you're looking for, especially if you're starting out with a real decent marketing strategy, you're looking for something that's like a backbone that you can rely on, that you can build on top of. I think we do that, but in general, right? You want to make sure that you have something in that serves as that nest. Seth, I'm like pretty sure I've said all I wanted to say, but you tell me.
Yeah, no, soon we get a few more questions, but people actually all stuck on to listen to us. So I guess we presented some good information there. We had a little bit of a plan to pad it for time by like pulling up a random website and just mocking it, because we do that a lot within the industry. Yeah, we're probably going to end up just like hurting some people's feelings. So we're not going to do that one. But if you ever get us alone at a conference and you want a funny 30 minutes, we can certainly rant on them forever. The one thing I would point out though, just someone who's built a lot of websites for B2B companies, knock it off with the stock photos. You don't need stock photos on your website. First off, those people are way too attractive and nobody thinks they know anything about IT. Right? But more so, I mean, they really want to see the goods, the absolute best MSP websites that I ever built. They had some nerds on them, you know, and it looked authentic. Authenticity is super valued, like, you know, in general, always has been, but is more and more over time, right? I mean, it used to be if you were going to get viewed millions of times talking about the news, you needed to wear a suit and a tie, and you needed to have everything buttoned up. These days, people are getting millions of views talking about the news and current events on YouTube, and they're just like in their pajamas, and they don't have a nice studio. They got swords in their background and whatnot, you know, and that authenticity, it when you're starting out a relationship, which is very much what MSPs are, it's not a one and done sort of thing. You're kind of proposing marriage. You want to come off like a real thing, a real business that's in their locality, you know, especially if you're a local MSP that has mostly local clients. Show the city you're from, show the people that work there, show you doing the things you do, all infinitely more effective than stock photos, which no matter what, whether someone's a marketing expert or not, when they come to a website and they see it populated with stock photos, they know they're stock photos. And it's immediately sending a signal to them that not to trust you. And that's all they got. They don't know how to shop for MSPs. There's no reviews out there. All they got is just the authenticity that you're come off with. So knock it off with the stock photos.
I had a problem with that, like real bad. When I was doing the marketing for an MSP, I had a guy come in and like, dude looked like he was just an Abercrombie and Fitch model. It was unfortunate for him. Yeah. And everywhere else in the world would be like, wow, how great. And we did photos of his office and it was beautiful and all that stuff. And everyone's like, hey, yeah, stock photo. Show me what you really like. And this Adonis of a man was the dude running it, and no one took him serious. He was a network engineer, super serious. No one cared. It's just like, it's weird. There's a lot of biases in marketing with IT. We have to overcome a lot of that stuff. It's really weird. Like people assume it's still like, yeah, it's like fat basement dwelling nerds. Some of us are, yes, but most of us are not. But I still am. Obviously, the swords thing speaks to that. But still, it is about credibility. And yeah, I saw some of the comments I haven't opened up, but like that trusted IT advisor thing is real, right? They want to make sure that you are legit. You're not scamming them, because also IT is one of the very, very, very few industries out there that can literally show everything you do, because you have all of it digital. You can show feeds and dashboards and reports and all that stuff. A lot of other industries don't have that. And because of that, people are like a little bit too scrutinous and also not scrutinous enough. It's a very strange thing with marketing. I first commented on this when Seth and I took this job at Cloud Radial. We were looking over it and we're like, this is like the most backwards thing I've ever seen as far as industry. It's like all the stuff that I was taught traditionally in marketing does not apply to MSPs. I couldn't tell you why, but like, hey, the emails, hey, the nurturing, hey, this. It's like, we want the realest of the real. It's like in a good way, not in a bad way. We're like 10 years behind all the other industries that have moved on to this stuff. Case in point, if you ever look at any of the statistics of desktop to mobile users, those that shop for IT services are still a majority desktop, which is bizarre. Every other industry in the world is mobile first, not MSPs.
Yeah. It's like it makes designing our website a lot easier. I mean, we're desktop first, you know. You have to be mobile first for everything else. A lot of good comments here. There's a couple things that I saw here. Norbert, one of our OGs and someone that uses our platform very well, he says, you know, we deal with cops. We got one picture on the site. They don't have time to be impressed. You know, where's the phone number? Which is true. You know, to a certain degree, it's, you got to think about like, what's the website actually get used for? 99 times out of 100, it's just like, they just need your phone number to call you or contact form. I do like this back and forth. You know, someone says, you know, people want real today. Ron says, you know, people want real today to become a trusted IT advisor. Norbert says, wait, I thought we did away with trusted advisor in a zero trust environment. Yeah, that is a difficult kind of tightrope to walk. You know, when you're trying to don't trust things, trust me. We say, you know, evidence is better than trust. You know, trust is great, you know. You can drive wonderful client relationships that last many years. It can also just mean that you get thrown out with the bathwater because that person gets a different job. But being able to replace that trust with evidence of what you do, clear evidence of what you do, is really the solution to that problem.
Well, yeah, like Ron just said it, and it's funny, is it's true. It is a super tight rope, because like literally a zero trust advisor, which is kind of a real thing, is going like, don't believe me, just get the data, just get the data, just get the data. But like, we know if we leave it to the client's hand, usually they're going to misinterpret a bunch of stuff. It's going to be potentially like a mess. Again, somebody views that and goes, whoa, I thought we were secure. We're not secure. Who knows? And then the other thing is a full trust advisor, which is like, yeah, don't worry about the numbers, trust me. And then that's also, if that goes successfully, it's the same problem. If you put all your stock and chips into one account manager, let's say, that's really nailing it with the clients, and that dude leaves, are you screwed? Is that client done for? That's the tightrope to walk. So it's like, yeah, I think the evidence back thing is true. Like, you want someone to say like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And if the client goes, I don't believe you, it's like, all right, here's what the data that we pull.
Yeah, and Ron also points out, it comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
That's my experience. I mean, that's the kind of existential nihilism that we can just punctuate this entire thing with. It's all going to kind of come down to the people that know you. And the marketing is kind of a difficult thing in the first place. Most of it will be those relationships, but maximize those relationships. Don't just have one relationship at a client. Have a relationship with everybody at a client. The more you help everybody at a client get their work done, the thing they actually care about, the more people that will have a relationship with you and that see you as an enabler of the things they get done, that will then go on to recommend you to somebody else. That's about, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's going to be 90% of almost any MSP's marketing efforts, is just enabling your advocates. Make sure they know, yeah, some of those are illegal. But maybe we should leave it at that. But always a pleasure speaking marketing with you, Ricky.
Likewise, and I hope we do some more stuff. Again, we're going to be doing part of my job now as VP of Marketing. Is to be on the lookout for not just our marketing. Like, yeah, it means that I'm going to do much more stuff for Cloud Radio, but also to be producing a bunch of stuff too. For people. And I know I've said that before, and this time, like, I have an entire team behind me. So it's not just me. I'm like, who knows what flyer I could make? Like, I have people now. So hopefully that should be coming pretty good. And they're a lot more talented than me. So I just get to be this schlub. It's going to be great. Yeah,
we do intend to, in the next year, do a better job of showing you what we mean. And we're going to like make some example websites and brochures. Not just saying, hey, you use those in your marketing. We're going to give you some good tangible examples.
For sure. All right. Well, then I think we'll let everyone off the hook a whole 8 minutes early.
Yeah.
Is the not admin default role now live? Not admin. What are you talking about, Alistair?
Not admin default role. Well,
I'm like with the user one. I'm like, I was about to end it, and I was like, I can't end it when there's an open question. I literally feel bad about it. I can't do that.
Not admin default role available. I got a feature request.
Oh yeah, so that's I'll plug that. It has nothing to do with it with this thing, but yeah, what you're talking about is we just we're like at the closing phases of our RBAC stuff. So previously we have really 3 roles, really 2 in Cloud Radio, right? It was the basic, like everyone, then you had the administrator, so it was like full view, limited view, and then like if you wanted something in between, so like we're doing the feature side, we're like, hey, I want them to have the basic stuff plus billing. You had to manually do that, right? That was a limited admin. You could do it, right? But it was like kind of case by case individual. With the RBAC, or the role-based access control, that's done away with, right? We're going to have standard ones. So you can build a marketing role or a billing role or whatever and update that. And that's it. The reason that has taken for friggin' ever is because A, this product is massive, and B, with an RBAC system, we have to touch every single permission like 3-4 times, because there has to be one for edit, one for write, one for read, one for this, one for that. So it's turning more into like a ConnectWise style, where it's like this permission has edit this, read this, like super, super granular. But where that ends up being is that obviously once you create those, you're done. You could say this goes to the billing or whatever. So it has more defined roles. The reason it's not out yet is because we have like 4 people testing every single facet of it, and they've been doing so. So we're trying to work out the kinks, make sure the buttons work the way they should. We're pretty close on it. So yes, it is delivered. It's like live and out there. No, yeah, totally. Yeah, it's I'm happy. If I don't know the answer to stuff, I'll be like, that's enough time. If I do know the answer, I'm like, we have 5 more minutes.
No, yeah, and this next product update is going to be wonderful. We do a lot of feature updates and whatnot. This one might be our best one yet.
Yeah, I think so. All right. I am dying for some coffee. I have to be honest with you.
Same.
I'm empty. I'm in an empty cup for like a while. Please.
All right. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.